the Movement for National Reformation moments ago had a press conference in Abuja, which was on the state of the nation. As we all know, the Nigerian state has been wobbling in the, since time immemorial. Now, many organizations and entities been coming up with solutions as to how to cure the malady bedeviling the nation. Movement for the National Reformation lent their voice today. And in summary, I want, if you don't mind, let me start with, the guest here with me in the studio. It's Dr. Jonathan Akuns and Comrade David Ajamobi and Reverend James Palm. These are people, individuals within the institution that I'll be speaking this afternoon. My first question will be, for the benefit of those who may have not followed the press conference earlier today in Abuja, would you kindly, in few words or moments, describe and summarize what just transpired in Abuja earlier today?
In terms of the summary of the press conference, we'll start by saying MNR, Movement for National Reformation. It's a reformist party, and we believe Nigeria was reformed with the creation of the 1963 Republican Constitution. As at that date of 1st October 1963, it was no longer colonial Nigeria, but self-rule reformed Nigeria, where ethnic nationalities had gathered in July of same year to say, yes, now that the decolonization process is coming to an end, which began from 1st October 1960, we want to remain as a single entity and therefore carry on as a republican democracy. That is the position. Between 1st October 1963, when nationalities agreed, sent their agreement to the parliament, and the parliament enacted the 1963 constitution, between then and now, constitutional governance lasted only for 2 years, 3 months, 2 weeks, and was terminated from 15th January 1966 to date. It's been military rule. Now, we had decolonized before. Before colonization, we were individual ethnic nationalities that shared boundaries. Colonization put us together. We decolonized. Now it is time to demilitarize. Since the military rule from 1966 to date has kept us on a governance template based on decrees. First, the constitution that was enacted in 1963 was suspended. Second, the powers of the federating units were taken away and unified into the federal government by decree number 34 of 1966. That has remained the position until today. Even though the federating units seem to have increased from 4 in 1963 or 1966 when the military struck to 36 states and 704 local governments, but these are simply mere composite administrative unit devoid of the real powers of the federating unit and some other federal issues that needs to be rejigged. Now, our desire to demilitarize says, well, the country has been reformed by colonialism, it has been reformed by self-rule, but we want to demilitarize by bringing back the constitution that went through the normal meal of we the people. Every constitution derives its life from we the people. The DNA of that process is simply about the ethnic nationalities agreeing to be a federation, then the elected representatives through the legitimate mandate that comes through adult suffrage and partisan politics. Representatives in parliament enacted the constitution. So we want to go back to it. Now we have a current elected official who came through that DNA process. They went through partisan politics. We did the election by way of universal adult suffrage principle. So they are qualified to technically repeal all the military decrees and remove the suspension on the 1963 Constitution and bring it back to life to be amended with current realities. Such current realities involve, as at 1963, it was parliamentary system. Now we have presidential system. It's a current reality. Our elected representatives will agree on what to do. We had 4 federating units. Now we have 36 composite administrative units. We now want them to be federating units, not just composite administrative units. So in a nutshell, and in one sentence, we have done it before by decolonization. We want to do it now by demilitarization. And that is a process that requires us to repeal some specific decrees. Decree number 1 of 1966 that suspended the Constitution. Decree number 34 of 1966 that took away the powers of the federating units into the federal government. And subsequent military decrees that were thrown out in 1984 and 1985, 86, or 85, when there was a change in government in 86. And ultimately, decree number 24 of 1999 that handed over power to civilian administration. Now that we have tested civilian administration for about 25 years, I think it's good to demilitarize. Technically, a political process that helps the military to professionally manage power that they have taken away from civil authority by force, by use of gun. The armed forces are expert managers in managing force and violence, but they have misused it to take away civil authority. So that is why we want to demilitarize now. So the press conference is to say.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Quite understood. But you know, in your submission, that it appears that the main issue that you have with the Constitution has to do with, you know, that Constitution coming from the military. Hence, you keep using the words to demilitarize the Constitution, right? Now, let me take Reverend James Palm here. So it's, if we look at the movement for national reformation, is the core issue that they have with the 1999 Constitution that is the core problem because it came from the military administration. Is that the core issue?
It's one of the issues. There are several issues involved. Because the 1999 Constitution actually is a schedule attached to decree number 24. And that is why we keep saying, let's demilitarize Nigeria. We're being ruled by a military decree, for goodness sake. The schedule attached, is it truly a constitution? Who wrote it? Was it negotiated by Nigerians? Do we even like what is in there? We don't. It was given to us completely by the military, kept a secret. When it was first used on 29th May 1999, when President Obasanjo was sworn in, it was kept a secret by the military, because on that day he placed his hand and swore to uphold it without knowing what's inside. Then the Minister of Information, who was supposed to print that constitution, had never seen it. That was late Chief John Nyangodo, was the Minister of Information. He never printed it. Well, that is one of the issues we have with that constitution. But why we keep recommending the 1963 constitution is because it's the only constitution that Nigerians came together and wrote for themselves. It went through Parliament in Tafawa Balewa Square, Lagos, in 1963. debated, first reading, second reading, third reading, and it was sent and then approved to come into effect on 1st of October 1963. Nigeria has not had a constitution that is autonomous by Nigerians. And what happened to it was simply suspended. Can we reenact that constitution? Oh yes, very simple. The present National Assembly, we gave them our sovereignty. We gave them a mandate. One bill can just lift that suspension. But there are other bills, there are other decrees that are also need to be removed. Decree number 34 of 1966 is called the Unification Decree. It's still in place. We are one country, one constitution. Are we a genuine federal republic? No. Who are the federating units? That's another major issue. Like my colleague has said, the present 36 states and 774 local governments are purely administrative units of the federal government. Every month, they all go to Abuja and just share. And we are saying MNR, actually, its main thrust is focused on genuine federalism being enthroned in Nigeria. That was the philosophy that the founding father, Chief Anthony Enahoro, started with in 1992 when MNR was set. And MNR worked closely with Pronaco and NADECO on this matter. We don't want to hear about the disintegration of Nigeria or ethnic whatever. And the press conference started clearly by us, MNR, condemning the 10 days end bad governance strike protest. We sympathized with the government and the president of Nigeria. And after that, we offered ways out. We are actually for good governance. Yes, but violence and killing, we observed a minute silence for those who lost their lives during the protest.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, let me push this question to Comrade David Ajumobi here. You know, your two colleagues there have talked on the 1999 Constitution. Reverend James Palm now talked about the Constitution not being autonomous, not emanating from the people. But if we move away from this conversation and diving into these arguments where people say that it is not about the Constitution, that it is about the people and the operators of whatever law. And they give instances where countries like the United Kingdom does not have a written constitution, yet things appear to be working well for them. Is it more about the constitution as a document, or is it more about the people? Because you don't need a constitution to know that looting or taking local government fund, state fund, street fund is a crime. And you don't need a change of constitution to have that individual who have stolen money to be jailed and rot in jail. What's your take, sir?
Yeah, thank you very much. It is much more of constitution than the operator. You know, constitution is like a protocol for survival of a group of people. It must protect and define how we relate and how people operate. You see, when we are saying we have to demilitarize our constitution, the real problem is that our constitution gives room to this corruption, to this maladministration. What people want and what makes it different from what people want is that we cannot continue operating this unitary federalism. You see, unitary federalism emanated from the command structure of the army that they transform to the civilian government when they assume power, which cannot favor us. You cannot fight for the people without the people. The people must contribute to the policy and rules that we govern them. You cannot just say you have a power at the center that's featured or resembling that of military structure. You allow people, every nation, in every nation, like Britain, you are saying, people, citizens are the primary resources to develop any nation. And they must be organized in a very free and democratic environment that they are convinced of. Like the Constitution of America, in the preface, there's a column that says, government are instituted deriving its just power from the consent of the governed. From the consent of the governed. So when you want to make the Constitution, you cannot just be assuming what is people's mind. Let them talk. Let them contribute. Let them define how they will think. And they will hold up the Constitution. This Constitution is our own Constitution, not their Constitution. They will claim it. So what they are saying is that there are a lot of errors there, like how that Constitution defines the command structure of a country. The 1960 Constitution, they are saying, it is a Constitution that emanates from the civilian environment for civil administration, outside any military threat or military restriction. You see, if people, it's civilian government. Okay, when Absalami left power and Obasanjo took him as civilian president, I think we can, okay, this is like American language, this is also of another color. Let us now have a truly democratic document when the civilian government is in place. That's what we are saying. But we cannot continue this unitary federalism. It choked the federating unit of their resourcefulness and their potentiality. So people want to be free. They want to contribute freely to the development of the country. So that's the major thing. That's the central thing that is very bad in that constitution. And you see, even the international the international law says, international bill of human rights define the democracy that the will of the people must be the basis of the authority of government. So coming out drafting documents like constitution and others to emanate from the people, and the government will just be the somebody implementing it in accordance to the will of the people. So that's what to demilitarize. But mind you, sorry, we have two processes. The 1963 Constitution took a step forward in decolonizing Nigerian political space. Before the military intervention now added that militarism to it. So the real genuine process we must face now is decolonization, which has not been finished, and unfinished business, then demilitarization.
Thank you very much. The Reverend Palm, you said you wanted to add something to it.
It's not yet just the attitude of the people. It's actually the constitution that is a big problem in Nigeria. The constitution says it's by we, the people of Nigeria, we gave it ourselves. No, it was not prepared that way. Secondly, the constitution takes care of one religion in Nigeria. There are many religions in Nigeria, and those who don't have religion, only one religion is treated by this 1999 so-called constitution. Also, there are contradictions inside the constitution. I saw where it says the age of maturity in this country is 18. But the same constitution goes on to say any girl who is married will be treated by this constitution as an adult. A 13, 14-year-old girl who gets married can sue and be sued, can be sent to an adult correctional center. Also, the constitution took all the wealth of Nigeria. It says all resources underground, mineral resources, hydrocarbons, and whatever wealth is underneath the ground belongs to the federal government. And then that constitution has a list of exclusive federal government items. There were 68 until last year when generation of electricity was removed. There are 67. The concurrent list which states can legislate on are only 30, now moved to 31. And a lot of them are and also the federal government legislates on them and overrule the state. I mean, there are quite a number of things wrong with the constitution. What of the creation of states and local government? On what basis was it done? Are they balanced? Yeah.
Thank you very much. Now, let me come back here. When you talk about And when three of you now, when you talk about the 1963 Constitution, many will refer to 1963 Constitution as a regional constitution that promoted regionalism. Is that correct, in your view? That 1963 Constitution promoted regionalism, right? Yes. Now I come to you, Jonathan Akuns here. If that be the case, I am also aware that some part of the Middle Belt are objecting the regional governance. For instance, there has been suggestions that the current reality that we have, which is the geopolitical zone, be converted into regions. Because when you say, let us have 1963 constitution with current reality, the current reality is that there is 6 geopolitical zones. Now, some people within the Middle Belt will say no. So the question is, how do we then choose and pick? Answer this question quickly, then I'll come to the visit by the Patriots, which is also, I want to understand what your team is also advocating for regarding to their propositions. But don't you think that this is a contradiction of 1963 Constitution, promoting that, and at the same time, some people within the Nigerian state are objecting to regional governance?
Very much. First and foremost, the 6 geopolitical system regions in Nigeria are simply notional. They are not constitutional. They are just notional reference points in political discourse. And although they truly reflect what the colonial administration did in bringing Nigeria together as a single entity by bringing subdivisions, sub-regional divisions together. But the real point about 1963 that is misunderstood by people, anytime you mention 1963, people think we are going back to just 4 regions and a parliamentary system. It's not so. And that's why I would say the spirit and the letter of 1963 Constitution is federalism, Republican federalism, very key, very important. And so, given that between 1966 and now, when that constitution was suspended, the structure of governance in Nigeria has changed remarkably. First, the composite federative units have increased that have reflected the desires of that brought about R.S. Hudson Commission for Northern Region and Sir Henry Willing's Commission for the Federation of Nigeria. Those 2 commissions were intended to get to the root of the structure of the federative unit. So the military has helped us to bring us up to speed by breaking the structure into 36 composite units called states. Now, these states, as they stand today, they lack self-autonomy. They lack, power is not devolved to them at all. But the erstwhile federative units under the 1963 Constitution had semi-autonomy. Power was fully devolved to them. They can make decisions about their regions and implement it. And when Nigeria as a federation had a high commissioner in London, in the UK, for instance, the federative units had their own, like 2IC, also to look after their own environment. But today, yes, we have 36 states, but they are simply composite administrative units because they lack semi-autonomy. So the 1963 Constitution is not being brought back wholesale. It's a framework, it's a foundation. We only need to build on it and improve it with current realities. And so Middle Belt, for instance, that you cited, would benefit from it in the sense that by the time the Constitution of 1963 is restored and amended, the current realities about federative units says 36 states. all the 36 states within the Middle Belt region will now look at themselves, and the communities will agree to either be a single federating unit or readjust their boundaries to suit their own desire.
Okay.
That readjustment process will come through boundary requests to the affected states in the sub-region, referendum. Once that is approved by the existing states in the sub-region, the outcome will now define what the new federating unit within Middle Belt will be. Okay. Currently, we talk about 6 states, but there's no guarantee that when we achieve the desire of bringing back 1963 Constitution and amending it, there will remain 6. There could be more, there could be less. Ditto any other geopolitical zone in Nigeria.
Okay.
At the end of the day, the good story will be those who have agreed to be a single federating unit will be happy.
Okay,
So Middle Belt will stand to benefit more than otherwise.
Okay, let me drive this conversation forward. We have the Detroits visiting the president recently. They are advocating for the president to convene a national constituent assembly with a mandate to, draft a new constitution. And those individuals that has to be within that constituent assembly must not be people who are affiliated to any political party. And some observers have said that, well, that is their personal opinion and personal observation. But one key thing here, one key takeaway from their visit to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is that they are demanding for a new constitution. Now, I'm aware also, the group called NINAS, by their Secretary General, that is Barrister Tony Nnadi. NINAS also are on the same trajectory of saying for a new constitution. However, the modalities may vary. If we come down to Movement for National Reformation, are you also advocating for a new constitution, or are you rooting for constitutional amendment? I mean, any of you can take this question if you so wish.
Fine. Yes, there are several voices that have been put in the public space about constitutional governance in Nigeria. Agreed, NINAS has done a thorough job getting historical facts, anecdotes, and even nuances. But the fundamental issue, the sentiment are the same. The fundamental difference between what MNR stands for and NINAS and similar other bodies is, what is the strategy to bring about a new constitution without destabilizing the system and creating chaos? And we say 1963 Constitution is a legal foundation that will create that social stability for us to reform, let me use the word, reform ourselves in a manner desirable. Otherwise, the ongoing chaos and violence is simply a statement about restructuring, even though we are contending with it as insecurity, but it's simply a statement about restructuring. So why do we need to restructure through violence and chaos when 1963 Constitution has given us a template? Clause chapter 11 or so of the 1963 Constitution talks about, makes ample provision about what the desires of the people, how the desires of the people will be accommodated constitutionally. And section 1 or 2 of the 1963 Constitution says this Constitution can be altered. This is how it can be altered. So if that legal template is there, all we need to do is get a seat on the table and through dialogue and conversation, we will get to where we want to be. There are two classical global strategies we can copy from. The US is a model. It has 50 states. Nigeria is just talking of currently 36 states. Even if you equalize it per political zone, with the highest that has 7, and you upgrade the number of states to every region to 7, there will just be 42 states. That would be a model to copy and modify it to suit our cultural environment. Look at the erstwhile USSR. Where is it today? When things were not functioning, they got to the table and talked. There was no violence. There was no chaos. Where is Czechoslovakia of the 60s and 70s? It was by dialogue and conversation. We must avoid the path of Yugoslavia at all costs. And that is why we need a social, a legal framework and a social context, which is provided by 1963. So if you need
who is going to
contain our emotions?
My question will be, who is going to make that happen? Is it the same National Assembly that has the power and are using it now that you're going to fall back on to bring back 1963? How are you going to make that happen?
Yes, it has to be the same current National Assembly because they have the legal mandate. We elected them. We've been going through several elections. They are the ones to do it. And the MNR proposal has that embedded in it. In fact, the MNR didn't just stop there. We drafted the bill. In fact, one bill to achieve all these things we're talking about. And we have forwarded that bill to the presidency, the draft bill to the presidency and to the leadership of the National Assembly, because we're very convicted that, and the state governor, we are very convinced, we believe that this is the shortest, direct, and legal route of achieving our proposal. Now, to comment very briefly on the Patriots' position, I believe Nigerians have heard it loud and clear, but I saw difficulties in it, especially in the National Assembly. The president, even if he likes what they've suggested, it will require elections, non-partisan elections. That means heavy money will be involved. INEC will have to be brought in. The whole country will go into electioneering. And who is going to foot the bill? Has it been budgeted for?
Well, I think the argument could be made that the ethnic nationalities could actually select people, as was done in 2014, not necessarily going into election, to get those who would be.
But specifically, the Patriots suggested that it could be done through 3 representatives from each of the 36 states through non-party elections. That's their suggestion. Okay. And we are just trying to say there are difficulties with that. And the same thing they discussed, like the 2014 National Conference, will have to go to the president, and it has to go by bill to the National Assembly. The National Assembly could reject it. What has happened? What happened to the 2014 National Conference 10 years ago? It's gathering dust. Do we want a similar thing to happen again? No.
Okay.
And we have, thank you.
Gentlemen, thank you very much. Your points are well noted. I think Comrade David Ajimobi want to say something. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, what I want to say is that, you see, the work of Petro is also an input to the 1963 Constitution. And the 1963 Constitution will just be a guide to help us have a seamless approach in coming out with a very new democratic documents to govern us. And what we are saying, even we have a 36 state now. You know, it was that 1963 constitution that we can read in our history that we had a very peaceful and democratic environment. This question of 36 states, they were just a military invention that continued to destroy the nation more, and also contributed to the cost of governance. How many, when we have 3 or 4 regions, how many premiers do you have? Now you have 36 states, you have 36 governors, 36 premiers. You have more than 1,000 commissioners. You see, and we are now clamoring for reduction in cost of governance. So I think the 1963 Constitution our most happiest moment before the military incursion destabilized us. We say, now let us get back to a kind of constitution where we freely, without military intervention, where we freely, without colonial intervention, come out with a document based on the government of the people we are operating at that particular time. We can't just try to modify it. Even if we continue, if the military did not intervene at that particular time, that constitution will have faced a lot of series of amendments itself. It cannot just be what it was in 1963. It will be entirely modified up to now because no constitution is static. Constitution is very stable. Stability because of the changes accompanying development in the society.
Exactly.
So
now, exactly. Let me take you on your point. You said if the 1963 Constitution was to be used up till now, it would have been amended multiple times. Therefore, those with the school of thought that said if the 1963 Constitution was perfect, why was it overthrown? Then I put this question to you before I take questions from the audience, in case if there is anyone within the audience that want to ask or make any contribution in 1 minute, I will just come up to you. You can raise your digital hand. Now, the question again, I put it to you. If the 1963 Constitution was perfect, why was it overthrown? To your point that you just made now, should we then not take your argument of amendment, because you said if 1963 Constitution was to be in use, it would have undergone series of amendments. There are some who now say, why don't we go into constitution amendment that would probably tilt towards 1963?
Thank you for that. You see, let me tell you one thing. Every constitution, regardless of how perfect it is, must always be amended. Because society, we are living in a world of society where nothing is permanent except change. And your constitution must be also be kept in tune with that tempo of changes. So when you are amending constitution doesn't mean that it's a failed constitution. You see, most of the country, they have processes, even ordinary organization, ordinary association, they are operating. You want to already at a CAC, they will tell you what are the processes of amending but a society that is very static. We have a constitution that is not that will not be changed. Look at what happened now. When we are at that digital age, our constitution was amended to give legality to email and others. It's an amendment. Now the 5th amendment that they are talking that of this present 1999 constitution, they now see how to legalize the artificial intelligence. You know, these are the changes. The changes come from technological development, from other interaction, from this and that. So we are not, human beings not a static something. We continue to experience change. Sometimes we are using a telephone, that box one, correct. It's only using wire, but now we are using wireless one. So the concept must always change to accommodate changes and to provide rooms and the capacity and power to advance more. So no society, you can never see any society that is so static.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. That is the much we can take, and that is a very fine place to anchor it. I will just take your closing remarks, starting with Jonathan Akunt. 1 minute, your closing remark, please.
Thank you very much. I would like to thank you for the opportunity given to us to share our thoughts about nation building in Nigeria with fellow Nigerians and the global community, to know that our desire needs to be achieved within legal and social context of stability. And given that every society evolves over time, before colonialism, we are individual ethnic group. Colonialism put us together, we decolonized. The military came in, we want to demilitarize, to deepen demilitarization actually, because the military has gone out of governance for about 25 years now. So we want to deepen that process by taking away all the military decrees and making them proper governance law of the National Assembly. So that's the clamor that we have. And National Movement for National Reformation is clear-minded. Our desire is to reform the society that works for all.
Thank you.
The Nigeria as a polity was reformed with the Constitution of 1963. Before then, it was colonial Nigeria, no more. So I'd like to thank you so much for the time you've given us.
Thank you very much, Comrade David Ajemobi. Please, in 1 minute, please. Your closing.
Well, simply, our process, our agenda is deepening the democratic process in Nigeria and returning Nigeria back to Nigeria.
Okay, thank you. And Reverend James Palm.
Yes. As a concluding remark,
yes,
it's obvious that Nigerians across the country are clamoring for a new constitution. 5 amendments have been made to the current one. The current National Assembly is on the 6th amendment. It's not satisfying Nigerians. Leaders of Nigeria should listen. If eminent voices like the Patriots, led by Chief Anyoku at his age, is talking about a new constitution, I plead with our leaders to listen to the different voices, gather them, marry them, and meet the yearnings of Nigerians. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We need a constitution of Federal Republic of Nigeria, not a constitution for Federal Republic of Nigeria.
Thank you very much. That's a very fine place to anchor it. Gentlemen, it's my pleasure to have you here this evening. Indeed, it has been a very enlightening conversation. Thank you very much once more.